All right, so today I'm going to talk about creating silence in the mind. And I've made a few videos about this. My perspective, for whatever it is worth, is that the mind can be silenced, actually quite simply, by inquiring into the nature of the noise. So I'm going to talk a little bit today about some of where our thoughts come from, right? Some things that we might want to look at and not ignore because they're simply trying to get our attention. So something that people may or may not know is that thoughts arise from the belly. They arise from the abdomen. The solar plexus is the personal mind, right? Although the other lower chakras, including the heart chakra, include the subconscious mind, and different aspects of the subconscious mind, really the personal mind, the adult, the separate self, is the solar plexus for the purposes of this conversation. And so while enlightenment is, on the one hand, the mind sinking into the heart, you could also think of it as the solar plexus kind of being sucked into the heart, where my separate will and God's will are one, right? I'm no longer lying to myself. I'm no longer competing with life. I'm no longer negotiating with life, right? When I no longer give energy to what powers the separate mind, right? The mind gets pulled into the mind of God, which is ultimately what you really are. So thoughts arise from the abdomen, but when we don't feel the vibrations, right, that are going on within us, they arise, they shoot up into the mind, and the brain interprets them as dialogue. And the dialogue, right, very often should be something that you pay attention to because it's a message. It's not something that I should just give no energy to and disidentify from. Over time, that technique might quiet the cause, right, which is a belief about myself, which is a belief about life, which myself and life are the same thing. But really, it's much quicker and more efficient if you just take a look. So first and foremost, right, since thoughts arise from disturbances in the belly, right, you want to start to put your attention in your body, right, below the diaphragm, and start to be aware and with love feel whatever is going on there, right? And ask yourself, what's the dialogue going on? What's that vibration? What am I avoiding feeling that's arising up into my mind and creating a dialogue? So for example, if the dialogue in your mind has a lot to do with defending yourself, right, there's a belief that there could be several beliefs. Ask yourself what it is for you. There could be a belief that it's tied to unworthiness. I don't know my inherent value, so I have to constantly explain myself to everyone. I have to justify my existence to the outer world, right? I have to justify my existence to my mother and my father and my friends and my, social media audience or whatever, right? So that dialogue is a symptom of a belief of unworthiness. It could also be a symptom, depending on the nature of the dialogue, that I do not trust myself. I don't trust myself. Why would I need to constantly validate my existence, even through astrological charts, and all of that is fine, right? But ultimately, if you want to be free, you have to trust yourself, right? And symptoms of not trusting myself are constantly asking questions, which questions are very powerful, right? The questions that we live with determine what we realize in our life, but meditating on a question that's important to our heart is different than living in a doubtful energy that's constantly doubting, not trusting life. So pay attention to the dialogue, right? Pay attention to the dialogue. What is the nature of the dialogue? If you traced it to its root, what would it be telling you? What do you believe about yourself and about life? What do you believe about yourself and about life? I'm going to talk about a major thing that really creates silence in our lives, and it is so simple. And I'll explain the nitty-gritty of it so that you can put it into practice. But basically, right, the bottom line is that reality is silent. Reality is silent. So dishonesty, right, me lying to myself or anybody else creates noise in the mind, because that's feedback saying if something were just true, there would be silence. For example, you are in a friendship or a relationship and you decide within yourself, you acknowledge within yourself rather, somebody has crossed a line with me. Silence, right? That's a silent acknowledgement. There's no arguing about it. There's no truth. There's nothing to argue about. It's just true, right? So let's say you're in a relationship and somebody has crossed a line with you, but your spiritual conditioning says you shouldn't have a reaction. So you start fighting with yourself. So you start trying to fix yourself. So you start feeling guilty and shameful about what's true for you. When if you would just acknowledge, oh, somebody has crossed a line with me, right? This could happen in a sexual context, right? This is very real. I talk about the real life applications of spirituality and how truth manifests as myself in the nitty-gritty of mundane life, right? This is where it counts. So somebody has crossed a line with me. I say a lot that everything can be said with love, right? So let's say you're in an intimate relationship. Somebody has crossed a line with you. Maybe at dinner they talk about things that are private to you, that you don't want to have discussed with other people. So if I acknowledge the truth, which is, oh, that hurts me and that's not appropriate, that doesn't align with my values, that's the truth. And then I tell the person, I would really appreciate if you wouldn't do that anymore, because that's not really something I want to share with the world. Or maybe it's in a sexual context. Maybe somebody crosses physical lines with you. And you say, like that, I'm not feeling that. Like, that doesn't feel good to me. Maybe it's like somebody's lustful energy is too powerful for you. Whatever it may be. If you acknowledge the truth, right? The truth. And the truth is true for so many reasons. Maybe you've had sexual trauma in your life. Maybe you're just not compatible with that person. I've said in other videos that like lack of sexual compatibility or relationship compatibility is not something you have to fix. It's a message where your job is to stay true to what is real for you. Because trust me, if you don't feel compatible and naturally aligned to something, it's for a very good reason. It's for a very good reason. Trust that. This goes back to trusting myself. Trusting myself creates silence. Right? If I am the source of my life and I acknowledge what is real for me, I stop lying to myself and I say, no, that's true. That doesn't feel good to me. Whether it's what that person's doing, whether it's what I'm looking at on social media, turn it off, right? If you acknowledge like, oh, the music I used to listen to, it no longer feels good to me, turn it off. Okay, that creates silence, because reality is silence. Reality is silence that expresses itself. When you act and live in your life and there's constant mental chatter about it, it's because you're not being honest with yourself. One of the reasons is that you're not being honest with yourself about perhaps a variety of things. You don't trust yourself. You don't recognize your inherent value as a being of light with values. Your values matter. Your perspective matters. It's not something that you have to alter or censor. It's a manifestation of light just as it is. So, honesty creates silence. It's a Zen practice to, even for one day, practice being completely honest with myself about what's important to me, Another thing that you might kind of gaslight yourself about is what you desire. What you desire is intelligent. If you desire a certain qualities in the home you want to live in the relationship that you want to experience, in the family life that you want to experience, those things are part of your soul's evolution to want. Why? If you grew up in a chaotic home and you desire a peaceful, serene home in nature with lots of beautiful space, if you lived in an unpleasant home that wasn't aesthetically pleasing to you and you desired to have aesthetically pleasing surroundings, that's not a shallow desire. That's part of your soul's evolution to realize you can create that because you're the creator. It's not a shallow thing. So to try to cancel out desire will create noise because desire is reality. The fact is, the desire is, the movement of evolution is that I desire these things, period. And I don't have to be mean to people who don't line up with that. I just have to remember what's important to me. And in the meantime, right, if you're in a relationship that's not the thing you have in your heart, practice appreciating it for what it is, creating boundaries, learning something that maybe you can learn in this situation, but not hating the other person. It's nobody's fault that you are where you are. You're creating your reality, right? You can say everything with love. And on that note, sometimes reactions are divine. There are volcanoes in nature. If rage is part of your personality as a pattern, that's definitely not, from my perspective at least, it's not something I resonate with. It's something that you are avoiding, that is exploding out of your being because you are not seeing a belief that you have about yourself that's causing a buildup of energy. But sometimes volcanoes explode. Sometimes I've been sexually abused, and guess what? I exploded, and it was right that I did, because that person felt the brunt of his actions, which is part of his soul's evolution. Of course, the ego could get carried away with this and justify unpleasant behavior. That's up to you to sort out within yourself, right? But the point is that when you are honest with your values, and you do this, right? Try for a day to not exaggerate anything you say, to not alter your expression to try to gain value or try to gain acceptance from the external world. You can be loved exactly as you are, and because you are the source of your life, if you simply live honestly, acknowledging your values, acknowledging the vibrations in your belly that rise up into thoughts, and to bring love and attention into them so that they can disperse and repurpose themselves into creative energy. If I am the source of my life and I source my own love and I source my own sense of value and worth, the world will reflect that, right? Honesty is about the end of conflict, the end of division within myself. It's not about having no opinions, no reactions. You know, something that's really divisive in this world is the opinion about the vaccine, about lots of things. And guess what? What's intuitive to you is right for you, no matter what anybody says, no matter what any expert says on either side of the issue. And this is not about being right. This is about trusting myself, honoring myself as an expression of light, as being enough as I am, and very important as I am. Because when I express in truth, I serve all of life. When I'm honest with myself, I vibrate, I shimmer the web of reality and create more honesty in the universe, which is myself. So try. Go a day without exaggerating anything you say. Go a day. This is another part about being honest. Oftentimes we don't give any attention to the good things that happen in our lives. We emphasize the negative. Maybe you're in a situation that you want to move faster than it is moving, but you will only acknowledge that it's not moving. Be honest about it. Has there been progress? Has there been progress? Might you be telling a story that's doing nothing but hurting you? Go throughout your day, be completely honest with yourself when you interact with other people. How do I really feel about this? Sometimes saying something, this is another kind of BS teaching in my opinion, that everything should be completely metabolized within action, right? The throat. And I will do a whole course about healing the throat, because I manifested cancer in my throat, which is action, acting on what I know, what is real for me, acting on my intuition, making decisions, intentions, as me being the source of those things and not anything else in my world. Taking action, having a conversation changes worlds. And if you don't believe that, think about when somebody has told you, something you did hurt me, something you did I didn't appreciate. And if you love that person, you looked at it and said, oh, maybe that's something that I could improve in myself. Yes, we can improve ourselves. We can improve the quality of our humanness by being honest with ourselves. So honesty creates silence. If you have a turbocharged mind, right, you have a gift. You have mental power. But if that mental momentum is using you and draining you and exhausting you, it's because there are things that you could inquire about in your experience. What can I be honest with myself about? If I interact with the world and I simply express from what is real for me with love, there's nothing to argue within myself about. There's no division. I can express, and no matter what anybody says, I express what is real for me with love, and there's nothing to argue about. There's no residual. There's no replaying it in my mind. It's complete silence, or the vibration of source. It expresses and it is complete. That doesn't mean that source doesn't express ongoing things like projects and books, but you know that it's your ego if you express and then you're justifying it, worrying about it, replaying it. Right? So why? Ask yourself, why? What is that about? What is that about? What is all of that noise about? How could I create more silence in my life? Can I acknowledge within myself that the way I feel about things is right? The way that I feel about things, my values are right for me, period. There's nothing to compete with. There's nobody or nothing that needs to validate me. My expression as a human is perfect as it is. Another thing that creates noise, of course, is doubt and worry. And if you have the belief that life is dangerous, that there will never be enough, you have the power to change those thoughts. Why am I bringing that up right now? Well, in the world, there's all kinds of shortages. There's all this collective energy. The price of groceries has gone up 30%. There's all kinds of things happening in the world. But you create your life based on your beliefs. And so if you are always worrying that there will never be enough, let me just tell you something. You could have run out of everything today. Everything. You don't know where your next meal is coming from. And it is as easy to trust life and choose and fire and wire the thought, I'm always provided for. I'm always provided for. Life is abundant and I am always provided for. It is just as easy to choose that thought and to meditate on that thought as it is to default into your autopilot of constant worry. And worry and doubt, as many times as it's been said, is one of the biggest culprits of people not getting what they want. Because worry and doubt is so normal to you. Lack is so normal to you. Trust me, I know this. My dad was a refugee. It's normal to him, even though he's had lots of success. It's still normal to him in his reality to constantly have this this feeling that there will never be enough, that something will be taken away. Something will be taken away. Something bad will happen to me. This is such a pervasive thought in the psyche, in the human psyche. But I'm telling you that it's just a thought. And trust me, because as I said in the last video I made, as my heart is expanding and opening, I am being shown visuals of beliefs in my psyche, including that something awful will happen to me when I move into my new home. When I move into my new home, an intruder will come in and murder me. I've had 2 murders in my family. And that causes a sort of psychic tension in my being, because on the one hand, I want this new place, and on the other hand, I have these fears. And I realized, wait a minute, the thought that the world is dangerous came from an experience. Not even an experience that I had, an experience that happened a year before I was born in my family. But I can choose, right? I can choose to relax my mind and say, no, I live in a safe world. I live in a safe world, and I am the source of my life. I am the source of my life, and I live in a safe world. I choose that I live in a safe world that loves me. That is loving to myself. I am the source of my life, and when I love myself enough to actually practice these things and choose beliefs that support my well-being and my evolution through joy, wow, so much psychic tension disappears. And I can tell you from experience that all of those visuals disappeared. I have had incredibly mystical experiences for the last 10 years. And the biggest one that I ever had was, and I say biggest because it was quite intense, and I'm going to write a book about it. But basically, my whole physical world became so dreamlike and light-like that I was seeing in my physical world my beliefs. So a nectar poured in through the top of my head and exploded out of my heart, and I was in the most intense ecstatic bliss, walking on this beautiful route where I used to live. And people who would physically walk by me would pull out a gun at me, okay? Physically, like as physical as this is right now, it's like the physical world was revealed to be a dream in a very vivid way. And so what my mind was showing me was, oh, yes, the reality is that you are the mind of God, which is a blissful truth, but there's also this other relative reality that you have beliefs in your mind that the world is dangerous, that you can be attacked, that the world wants to hurt you. And so it was ironic to be in such an incredible bliss, but also see this violence coming at me. And this has been a theme in my awakening because I am breaking through these beliefs. And just last week, I realized, like, I don't have to wait for this to go. I can choose a thought. I can choose a thought. I live in a loving universe. I live in a loving universe. I am the source of my life. Life is not dangerous. Life is a reflection of what I believe. And I believe that life is love. I believe in a loving universe. I believe that I am loved. Me as a human, I am loved. And so that as well really releases so much psychic tension. If you visualize and you about desires and you get pushback, this is a great way to do shadow work. If you visualize things that you want in your life, whether it's a deeply loving relationship, whether it's to have children, whether it's to have a beautiful space, stay in that reality for a while, okay, and see what pushes back at you. That's a belief in your mind that you can change right now. So bottom line, silence is created from honesty. Honesty being not exaggerating, at all, acknowledging my values and expressing from my values, not from spiritual values, not from what I've learned from a book, not from the Bhagavad Gita, from what is real for me, right? That creates silence, because there's no division, there's nothing to justify, there's nothing to argue about, there's just reality. And I express that by not exaggerating, by not lying to people, by not deceiving people. If you lie to people on a regular basis, it's okay. Don't beat yourself up for it, but ask yourself, is this necessary? It's not. You can be truthful about everything with love, and the truth really does set yourself free and others free. How does it set you free? It creates silence. Because when you deceive, when you censor yourself and deceive, life is set up to make you suffer if you are not authentic. It will make you suffer if you don't answer your soul's calling. It will make you suffer if you censor yourself, because you are life expressing, right? So if you try to censor that expression, it's going to beat you up inside, often in the form of mental noise. And then acknowledging the truth that I do create my reality, and the only thing, as the Course in Miracles says, that can harm me is my mind. So do I have intense psychic tension? Do I have fear that there will never be enough? Change the thought. Change the thought. Reason it out with yourself. If it's not that easy for you to simply change a thought, reason it out. Is it true? Is this belief necessarily true? Where did it come from? Can I neutralize the charge? The higher the charge, whether it's positive or negative, the more you go towards it or avoid it, right? So let's say you have negative and positive. What I have deemed extremely negative, which is running out of supplies, I will run away from that with all of my energy, and that will also be a source of mental noise. So how do I reconcile the opposites? I look at it and realize, wait a minute, there's nothing inherently dangerous in reality. There's just the way that my mind perceives reality. So if I look at this fear and I say, this is literally just a belief. Maybe it's played out in certain ways. Can you look at how it hasn't played out? Can you look at how you have been safe? Can you look at how you have been? Can you look at evidence that already blows this fear out of the water? Can you just softly reason with yourself to just lessen the charge of the negativity? Just lessening charge will release so much psychic tension and noise in your experience. So here, I hope I have clearly explained some ways to create silence in your life. Reality is silent. When you are not divided inside, life is simple. There's no justification, there's no explanation, there's no validation, there's no rerunning it in your mind, there's no rehearsing it anymore. It just is. Your life will be so simple when you see this. So ask yourself, how can I bring more honesty into my life? And a lot of wonderful things will happen for you. Have a good day.